Hey everybody, thanks for watching my video. This one's called Contracts with the Devil. Please like the video and circulate it around. We got to overcome this YouTube censorship, taking reprisals against us for our political beliefs, because they're going to get sued is what's going to happen. But in the meanwhile, I gotta make it worthwhile to do this. It's hardly even worth the trouble anymore. Anyways, I'm not a liar. Well, I meant a lawyer. No, actually, I meant a liar. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I provided references to aid you in your research, but I don't know everything, and I'm open to any ideas. There's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. If the people do not know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? Never forget the men who started this country were marijuana-growing, whiskey-drinking, tax-evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the pigs. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. So I hope to show in this video how we're literally involved with contracts with the devil. Patrick Henry, after witnessing a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license, coined the phrase, "Give me liberty or give me death." And I second the phrase. Shortly after the War of Independence, in the case Chisholm versus Georgia, 1796 or 1794, something like that. Anyways, in doing this, I shall have occasion incidentally to evince how true it is that states and governments were made for man, at the same time how his creatures and servants have first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. A state like a merchant makes a contract. A dishonest state, like a dishonest merchant, woefully refuses to discharge it. You are literally in a contract with the devil. This is Carlisle versus United States, U.S. Supreme Court, 1873. The rights of sovereignty extend to persons, all persons and things not privileged that are within the territory. If you have a privilege, then that's a contract. They extend to all strangers' residents therein, not only to those who are naturalized and to those who are domiciled therein, having taken up their abode with the intention of permanent residence, but also to those whose residence is transitory. All strangers are under the protection of the sovereign while they're within his territory and owe a temporary allegiance in return for that protection. So strangers are people who are aliens. Okay, there's the registered aliens, the green card holders, and the illegal aliens who don't have a green card. Okay, and so that's why they have to give them all sorts of freebies, free health care, free food, free this, free that, because they got to give them privileges so they can get them in a contract. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. Like a fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. Well said, George Washington. Patrick Henry, have you had enough yet? Patrick Henry, after witnessing man flogged to death for refusing to take a license, coined the phrase, "Give me liberty or give me death." Have you had enough yet? The Bible says you're not supposed to respect persons. There's not supposed to be any titles of nobility. Let me not, I pray you, accept any man's person. Neither let me give flattering titles unto man, for I know not to give flattering titles, and in so doing my Maker would soon take me away. But if ye have respect to persons, ye commit sin, and are convinced of the law as transgressors. Article 1 of the Lieber Code. A place, district, or country occupied by an enemy stands in consequence of the occupation under the martial law of the invading army or occupying army, whether by proclamation declaring martial law or any public warning to the inhabitants has been issued or not. Martial law is the immediate and direct effect and consequence of occupation or conquest. The presence of a hostile army proclaims its martial law. That's Article 1 of the Lieber Code. So what we're doing is we're showing here how everything that's going on today is satanic. Okay, so we have all sorts of titles of nobility, we have respect for persons, and we have martial law. Texas is under martial law. It's martial law. There's a couple ways that you can get martial law. One's by bankruptcy and one's by military occupation. Martial law does not cease during a hostile occupation except by special proclamation ordered by the Commander-in-Chief or by special mention in the Treaty of Peace concluding the war. And so in Texas, there's been no proclamations, and there was no Treaty of Peace. Martial law in a hostile country consists in suspension by the occupying military authority, the criminal and civil law, and of the domestic administration and government in the occupied place or territory, and in the substitution of military rule and force for the same, as well as in the dictation of general laws. That's dictatorship, folks. As far as military necessity requires the suspension, substitution, or dictation. Article 3 of the Labor Code. And this is taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ella to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. Note, under law martial, only the criminal jurisdiction of a military court is the recognized law. But as Article 3 says, the civil courts can continue wholly or in part as long as the civil jurisdiction does not violate the military orders laid down by the Commander-in-Chief or one of his commanders. By this means, a military venue, jurisdiction, and authority are imposed upon the occupied populace under the disguise of the ordinary civil courts and officers of the occupied district or region, because the so-called civil authorities in an occupied district or region only act at the pleasure of a military authority. It should also be noted here that the several state legislatures, county boards of commissioners, and city councils are constantly legislating to please the edicts of the federal government, the occupying force, and that their legislation in this sense is not an exercise of state sovereignty, but instead a compliance with the edicts of the military force which occupies the several states, and consequently are edicts of martial law. A statute. All statutes are edicts under martial law. Regulations are edicts under martial law. Codes are edicts under martial law. Rules are edicts under martial law. Even the constitutions are edicts under martial law. Constitutional amendment is edicts under martial law. Article 44 of the Labor Code. All wanton violence committed against persons in the invaded country, all destruction of property not commanded by the authorized officer, all robbery, all pillage or sacking, even after taking a place by main force, all rape, wounding, maiming, or killing of such inhabitants are prohibited under the penalty of death, or such other severe punishment as may seem adequate for the gravity of the offense. A soldier, officer, or private in the act of committing such violence and disobeying a superior ordering him to abstain from it may be lawfully killed on the spot by such superior. And so what's happened is that basically gives them one try, a one-off. Okay, they can try it once and get away with it. And that's codified in Texas codes. Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 38.23, evidence not to be used, which is, by the way, an edict under martial law. No evidence obtained by an officer or other person in violation of any provisions of the Constitution or laws of the state of Texas or of the constitutional laws of the United States of America shall be admitted in evidence against the accused on the trial of any criminal case. It is an exception to the provisions of subsection A of this article that the evidence was obtained by a law enforcement officer acting in objective good faith reliance upon a warrant issued by a neutral magistrate based on probable cause. So they get a one-off. And this is codified federal too, okay? 18 U.S.C. 2707 civil action. A good faith reliance on a court warrant or order, a grand jury subpoena, a legislative authorization, or a statutory authorization, including a request of a governmental entity under Section 2703F of this title, a request for an investigative or law enforcement officer under Section 2518.7 of this title, or a good faith determination that Section 2511.3 of this title permitted the conduct complained of, is a complete defense to any civil or criminal action brought under this chapter or any other law. Have you had enough yet? Patrick Henry coined the phrase, "Give me liberty or give me death," after witnessing a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants for a complete set of YouTube videos with private information shares, a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forms. Contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. And donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the IOUs, the military script, the fake money, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. All statutes, codes, rules, regulations, and constitutions are edicts under martial law. Every constitutional amendment after 1861 is an edict under martial law. Military necessity means martial law. All Civil War states are under military occupation. Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas, Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky. All the states in the territory conquered in the war with Mexico are under military occupation. Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada. Dictation equals dictatorship. Military dictatorship. Law enforcement is enforcing the martial law. That's what they're doing. So all law enforcement officers can wear two hats. They're either a law enforcement officer or they're a peace officer. If they're a law enforcement officer, they are enforcing the martial law. And you have agreed to it by way of a contract with the privileges. Okay, when you get the privileges, that's a contract. When the southern states walked out of Congress in 1861, they ceased to have a quorum. Under executive authority, Lincoln ordered Congress to reconvene. When the Supreme Court ruled against something Lincoln did, he ordered troops to the Supreme Court. And even to this day, Rule 45 under the Supreme Court rule says all process of this court issues in the name of the President of the United States. There is no separation of powers. It's a full military dictatorship. It's exactly what's going on. Remember when Obama wanted to pass his Obamacare, and the courts were coming out railing against him and overturning it and all sorts of stuff. And so what Obama did is he came out and started railing against the courts. And the next thing you know, it was all constitutional. All statutes, state or federal, passed prior to 1861 are lawful de jure statutes. All statutes, state or federal, passed after 1861 are martial law statutes. Two national governments exist, one to be maintained under the Constitution with all its restrictions, the other to be maintained by Congress outside and independently of that instrument. And that's U.S. Supreme Court, Downs versus Bidwell, 1901. In 1871, Congress set up a corporation to operate as the government of the District of Columbia. And in 1933, it went bankrupt. It's an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March 9, 1933, 48 Stat 1, Public Law 89-719, declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent. H.J.R. 192, 73rd Congress in session, June 5, 1933, joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolve the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental officers, and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. That's United States Congressional Record, March 17, 1993, Volume 33. And on the same day, March 9, 1933, since March 9, 1933, the United States has been in a state of declared national emergency. Under the powers delegated by these statutes, the President may seize property, organize and control the means of production, seize commodities, assign military forces abroad, institute martial law, seize and control all transportation and communication, regulate the operation of private enterprise, restrict travel, and in a plethora of particular ways control the lives of all American citizens. A majority of the people of the United States have lived all their lives under emergency rule. That's martial law, folks. For 40 years, freedoms and governmental procedures guaranteed by the Constitution have in varying degrees been abridged by laws brought into force by states of national emergency. And that's U.S. Senate Report number 93-549, dated November 19, 1973. Pentagon Inc., Google, YouTube, Facebook, Amazon masquerading as private companies. This is all evidence of the martial law. This court declared in the slaughterhouse cases that the 14th Amendment as well as the 13th and 15th were adopted for the protection of the Negroes in their freedom. Okay, so they're martial law amendments. The 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment were designed mainly for the protection of the newly emancipated Negroes. Okay, they're martial law amendments. When you get a privilege, then you bring yourself under the jurisdiction of these amendments. After the adoption of the 14th Amendment, a bill which became the first Civil Rights Act was introduced in the 39th Congress, the major purpose of which was to secure to the recently freed Negroes all the civil rights secured to white men. None other than citizens of the United States were within the provisions of the Act. Okay, that means the blacks. Okay, again, this is a martial law amendment, martial law statute. This is all what's going on. The dissenting opinion asserts that the 14th Amendment was a part of the Constitution of the United States. While this same assertion has been made by the United States Supreme Court, that court has never held that the amendment was legally adopted. I cannot believe that any court in full possession of its faculties could honestly hold that the amendment was properly approved and adopted. It's unconstitutional. The 14th Amendment was actually a revision. It's a martial law amendment. Everything done after 1861 was done under martial law. All statutes, constitutions, codes, rules, regulations, amendments are for the unconstitutional corporation that was set up in 1871. Martial law falls under the law of nations. This will work for any country on the planet because it falls under the law of nations. Find any national emergency, including a bankruptcy, and you'll have proof that your country is operating under martial law. Martial law extends to property and to persons, whether they are subjects of the enemy or aliens to that government. So again, it's subjects and aliens. Nobody else. It does not affect we the people. Why would anyone want to be a low-life scumbag U.S. citizen? If a military police officer is talking to you, then you're a subject, and you are the enemy. This is McCullough versus Maryland, 1819. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may be pronounced as self-evident. It's obvious. The sovereignty of the state extends to everything which exists by its authority or its permission. Gee, that sounds like a privilege. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the other property belonging to the United States. That's U.S. citizens, okay? And that's regulations, okay? Respecting the other property of the United States. And so that means it's owned, okay? Regulations are for people that are owned, okay? And this is the same in all countries. Canadian Ownership and Control Determination Act. Owned means subject to the regulations. If you were subject to the regulations, you were owned. If you were subject to the regulations, you are property. You are a slave. Have you had enough yet? Patrick Henry coined the phrase, "Give me liberty or give me death," after witnessing a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. Check out my other videos: Bankster Thieves Playlist, Roman Cult Playlist, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, Bar Members 1 to 3, Do-It-Yourself How Not to Volunteer for the Selective Service in the Draft, Martial Laws Here, Do-It-Yourself No Income Tax, Do-It-Yourself Free Mail, Do-it-yourself kangaroo courts 1 through 13. Canada Border Pigs playlist. Bar members and their Satanic Connections playlist. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. Okay, so 14th Amendment, Section 1. Okay, so if you're a person, then you're a U.S. citizen. So are you a person? The term individual means a citizen of the United States or alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence. The term federal personnel means officers, employees of the government of the United States, members of the uniformed services, including members of the reserve components, individuals entitled to receive immediate or deferred retirement benefits under any retirement program of the government of the United States, including survivor benefits. Okay, so here we have a list of privileges. First of all, an alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence that's a privilege. Individuals entitled to receive immediate or deferred retirement benefits under any retirement program of the government, that's a privilege. Federal personnel, officers, employees of the government of the United States, members of the uniformed services, that's a privilege. These are all privileges, and this is all stuff tied to Social Security numbers. That's a privilege as well. So retirements, all of that's a privilege. That's the contract. This is the Law of Persons by Joseph R. Long, published 1912. The Classifications of Persons. This is Roman law. The Roman law distinguished 3 kinds of personal status or degree of legal capacity and classified human beings with respect to thereto as follows. Loss of freedom was capitis diminutio maxima. A Roman citizen cannot legally be sold into slavery, but he might become a slavery by condemnation for crime or by being captured by an enemy. And so again, capitis diminutio maxima, that's when they spell your name in all block capital letters. They're saying you're a slave. You're property. You're owned. It's exactly what you are. But remember, it's you that has to introduce the evidence for the evidence to be valid. All evidence has to be, if you don't introduce the evidence, then it's hearsay. It's all hearsay. This is taken from the Commentaries of Gaius and the Rules of Opie and translated with notes by J.T. Abdi and Brian Walker, section 83, page 198 and 199. To take an instant, when a person is given himself an adoption, okay, so you give yourself an adoption, did you know that? Or a woman passed under manus, all their property, corporal and incorporeal, and all that is due to them is acquired by the adopting father or the coeptionator, except those things which perish by capitis diminutio, of which kind are a usufruct. Okay, so again, that's the all block capital letters, is a usufruct. An obligation to services on the part of freedmen contracted by oath, and matters enforceable by a statute. Okay, so all statutes are contracts, privileges. If you do something that a statute says, then you just got yourself in a contract. Every taxpayer is assessed a trust having sufficient interest in preventing abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. Okay, that's a summary from Henry Boland's, and under the Congressional Record, a summary of 5 pages of the Congressional Record says a citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the public charitable trust, the constructive cesticate trust of U.S. Inc. under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of the USA and U.S. Inc. Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity, for when they were driven out of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted, not to themselves directly, but the nominal fiat-fees to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits, while the season of the land remained in the nominal fiat-fee, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy, to be bound in conscience to account to a cesticate use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. and it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. Well, so, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy? That's the Roman cult, folks. Ecclesiastical ingenuity, that's the Roman cult, folks. To be bound in conscience to account to assess the use for the rents and emoluments of the estate, that's taxes, folks. Slater's protestations to the effect that he derives no benefit from the United States government have no bearing on his legal obligations to pay income tax. Unless the defendant can establish that he's not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability. And it's in the D.C. Code. Well, the United States Code. No, it's D.C. Code, okay? You got to understand that. All United States Code is really D.C. Code. They just call it United States Code. Anyways, the legal estate to be in necessitary use. That's at 31 Stat 1432. And in 31 Stat 1189, it says, be it further enacted that interpretation and construction of said code, the following rules should be observed, namely, the third person shall be held to apply to partnerships and corporations. Absence of 7 years, presumption of death. Okay, so they presume you're dead, so it's a cestacate trust. So they just go ahead and assault you with their cestacate trust, unless you defeat their presumptions. And you got to do it in the right way. And that's all found in the Uniform Commercial Code too. It's all commerce. And this is where it's codified. Under Title 15, United States Code, Section 44, definitions, corporation shall be deemed to include any company, trust, so-called Massachusetts trust or association, incorporated or unincorporated, which is organized to carry on business for its own profit or that of its members, and has shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest, and it goes through the same definition, except it doesn't have shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. That's the cestacate trust. This is the second definition. Every tree, there's two political jurisdictions. There's God's and there's Lucifer's, okay? This is all satanic. You're in a contract with the devil. Every tree has living things, people, animals, plants, heaven, earth, the universe, lawful, natural, and then the tree in the midst of the garden is fictitious. Persons, corporations, domicile, residence, legal, political, that's all satanic. The term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. The term citizen in the United States is analogous to the term subject in the common law. Civil rights under the 14th Amendment are for federal citizens, not state citizens. Federal citizens as parents have no right to the custody of their infant children except subject to the paramount right of the state. Federal citizens have no rights at all. It is evident that they, U.S. citizens, have not the political rights that are vested in citizens of the states. They are not constituents of any community in which is vested any sovereign power of government. Their position partakes more of the character of subjects than of citizens. They are subject to the law of the United States but have no voice in its management. They are allowed to make laws. The validity of these laws is derived from the sanction of a government in which they are not represented. Mere citizenship they may have, but the political rights of citizens they cannot enjoy. Martial law affects chiefly the police and the collection of public revenue and taxes, whether imposed by the expelled government or by the invader, and refers mainly to the support and efficiency of the army, its safety, and the safety of its operations. Now you know why they always want you to be safe. Got to be safe. Be safe. Do you feel like you have no constitutional rights when it comes to income taxes? Because you don't. You consented. It's a contract. All police are military police. They're called Federal Bureau of Investigation military police. You have city military police. You have state military police. You have Homeland Security military police. You have county military police or county sheriffs. County military police. It depends on what they're doing. All police are military police, and if they're talking to you, then you are a subject and you are the enemy. The real domestic terrorists. Because you are the enemy. murdered by police. How many police? You see them almost every night on television murdering somebody. You are the enemy.
We talked it over, and after investigating it ourselves, we decided we're not guilty.
Beware violent street gangs. The typical gang member has gang colors, is heavily armed, well organized, a gang identifier. Do not approach. Gang members are aggressive and notoriously violent. The tyrant, who in order to hold his power suppresses every superiority, does away with good men, forbids education and light, controls every movement of the citizens, and keeping them under perpetual servitude, wants them to grow accustomed to baseness and cowardice, has his spies everywhere to listen to what is said in the meetings, and spreads dissension and calumny among the citizens. Calumny is false information. And impoverishes them, is obliged to make war in order to keep his subjects occupied and impose upon them a permanent need of a chief. That's Aristotle. You know, the founding fathers called King George a tyrant. They had access to this. They knew what Aristotle had said. And so they called King George a tyrant. Well, I got to tell you, folks, Obama was a textbook tyrant. And Trump is trying to undo all this stuff. So he is a dictator. There's no doubt about it. But I would call him a benevolent dictator. He is a dictator. They're all dictators. Military jurisdictions of two kinds. First, that which is conferred and defined by statute. Second, that which is defined by common law of war. Military offenses under the statute law must be tried in the manner therein directed, but military offenses which do not come within the statute must be tried and punished under the common law of war. That's court-martial. The character of the courts which exercise these jurisdictions depends upon the local laws of each particular country. In the armies of the United States, the first is exercised by court-martial, while cases which do not come within the rules and articles of war of the jurisdiction conferred by statute are tried by military commissions. So, all courts, that's why you see these judges wear these black robes. That's a military commissioner is what they are. They're a bought and paid for whore. That's you know, don't get me going. All statutes are in support of the martial law. All statutes apply to subjects only. There's two kinds of court proceedings, court-martials and military commissions. The only Article 3 courts are set up by we the people. That's why we need to get our jural assemblies going. But nobody wants to participate. It's amazing how many brain-dead idiots don't want to participate. Have you had enough yet? Give me liberty or give me death is a phrase coined by Patrick Henry after witnessing a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. When you make an application for a social security number, a birth certificate, or a driver's license, or a government benefit, you're saying you're a person. That's a contract. That's a privilege. You just gave up your freedom. You just sold it down the river for a mess of pottage. For fake money. It's not even real money. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Steemit. Don't forget to like this video on YouTube. Don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button. Help me to overcome this YouTube censorship and taking reprisals for our political beliefs. I would, so anything you do is appreciated. And don't forget to click the subscribe button and so that you're notified when there's a new upload. On Steemit, don't forget to vote and make your comments. BitChute, that's a BitChute profile. I also have a Patreon profile under Sovereignty International at Patreon. This is the front page of my channel. The subscribe button's already been clicked. The bell hasn't been clicked. Otherwise, it'll look like it's vibrating. So the arrow's pointing at the bell. You got to click the bell if you want to be notified of uploads. Under the international law of warfare, all parties to a cause must appear by nom de guerre because an alien enemy cannot maintain an action during the war in his own name. So when that cop stops you for speeding and spells your name in all block capital letters and they call you the defendant, you're an alien enemy. Okay, you got to understand that. That's exactly what's going on. You volunteered. You participated. You registered your vehicle. Okay, that is a privilege. There's no law that says you have to. Matter of fact, there's laws that say that you're not required to. A mixed war is one which is made on one side by public authority and the other by mere private persons. He saith, Yes, and when he has come into his house, Jesus prevented him and said, What thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children or of strangers? Peter saith unto him, Of strangers. Jesus saith unto him, Then are the children free. Well, strangers are people who are not born in the land, right? That's who the tribute is. When you volunteer for a Social Security number, then that's a stranger. Okay, you're saying I'm a stranger. This is the Trading with the Enemy Act. The President, if he shall find it compatible with the safety of the United States and with the successful prosecution of the war, may, during the time of the war, the President may, through any agency that he may designate and under such rules and regulations as he may prescribe, by means of instructions, licenses, or otherwise, regulate, direct, compel, nullify, void, prevent, or prohibit, or exercise any right, power, or privilege with respect to any property by any person subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, and upon the terms directed by the President, any agency or person, and such designated agency or person may perform any and all acts incident to accomplishment or furtherance of these purposes. So he can literally do anything. Okay, again, that's the Trading with the Enemy Act. And any person, okay? That means U.S. citizens, folks. You remember when, what's his name? Lindsey Graham at the Kavanaugh hearings. Lindsey Graham asked Kavanaugh if a U.S. citizen could be tried for stuff that he does in Afghanistan, and Kavanaugh says yes. Because U.S. citizens don't have any rights, and they can go after them anywhere on the planet. One law shall be him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you. Thou shalt neither vex a stranger nor oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. That's how they enslaved the children of Israel. And also thou shalt not oppress a stranger, for ye know the heart of a stranger, seeing you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Remember, the Supreme Court said, strangers not privileged or sovereign. So they have to get them in a contract. So you go and get yourself in a contract and say you're a stranger. And if a stranger sojourn with thee in your land, ye shall not vex him. Love ye therefore the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. That's how they did it. You shall not eat of anything that dieth of itself, thou shalt give it unto the stranger that is in thy gates, that he may eat it, or thou mayest sell it unto an alien, for thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. So you could give it, you could give stuff like that to the strangers. Okay, so obviously in the Bible, and Deuteronomy 23 and 20, unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury. Can't lend to your brother on a usury. Why do you think that they won't give you a credit card without a Social Security number? A Social Security number is a number for a stranger. It's exactly what it is. Once you get the Social Security number, then they can loan you some of their fake money. It's a mess of pottage. Residents, as distinguished from citizens, are aliens who are permitted to take up their permanent abode in the country. That's why the brain-dead idiot Gestapo says, where's your residence? Being bound to the society by reason of their dwelling in it, they are subject to his law so long as they remain there, and being protected by it, they must defend it. Although they do not enjoy all the rights of citizens, they have only certain privileges which the law or custom gives them. Permanent residents are those which have been given the right of perpetual residence. They are sort of a citizen of a less privileged character, and are subject to the society without enjoying all its advantages. Their children succeed to their status, for the right of perpetual residence given them by the state passes to their children. And that's Law of Nations by Vattel, Book 1, Chapter 19, Section 213, page 87. Again, the rights of sovereignty extend to all persons and things not privileged. Not privileged. That are within the territory. They extend to all strangers resident therein, not only to those who are naturalized, and to those who are domiciled therein, having taken up their abode with the intention of permanent residence, but also to those whose residence is transitory. All strangers are under the protection of the sovereign while they're within his territory and owe a temporary allegiance in return for that protection. There's always been two classes of citizens. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. That's U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 2, Clause 1. Leviticus 19:34, but the stranger that dwelleth among you shall be unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Love ye therefore the stranger, that you are strangers in the land of Egypt. We call ourselves Christian. People don't have a clue what it means to be a Christian. Numbers 15 and 15, one ordinance shall be both for you of the congregation and also for the stranger that sojourneth with you, an ordinance for forever in your generations, as ye are, so shall the stranger be before the Lord. And if a stranger shall sojourn among you, and will keep the Passover unto the Lord, according to the ordinance of the Passover, and according to the manner thereof, so shall he do. Ye shall have one ordinance both for the stranger and for him that was born in the land. Okay, the stranger and the born in the land. That's the two classes of citizens. They've always existed. But individuals, when acting as representatives of a collective group, cannot be said to be exercising their personal rights and duties, nor be entitled to purely personal privileges. Rather, they assume the rights, duties, and privileges of the artificial entity or association of which they're agents or officers, and are bound by its obligations. So that's where you get to be a surety. Assumption. In its origin and action of tort, assumption was soon transformed into action of contract, becoming afterwards a remedy where there was neither tort nor remedy, nor contract, based at first upon an express promise. It was afterwards supported upon an implied promise, and even upon a fictitious promise. Okay, so you got these quasi-contracts now. Introduced as a special manifestation of the action on the case, it soon acquired the dignity of a distinct form of action which superseded debt. Okay, so these are all commercial terms now. Superseded debt became concurrent with account, with case upon bailment or warranty and bills of exchange, and competed with equity in the case of essentially equitable quasi-contracts growing out of the principle of unjust enrichment. Surely it would be hard to find a better illustration of the flexibility and power of self-development of common law. Yes, these are bar members. This is taken from Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition, page 379. Both in Roman and English law, there are certain obligations which were not in truth contractual, but which the law treats as if they were. They are contractual in law, but not in fact, right? So they get to assault you with one of their quasi-contracts. But they have to establish the legal fiction first. They're contractual in law, but not in fact, being the subject matter of a fictitious extension of the sphere of contract to cover obligations which do not in reality fall within it. Quasi-constructive quasi-contracts are based solely upon the legal fiction of law. Okay, so they gotta fabricate evidence of the slave. Why do you think they want your social security number, date of birth when you're applying for anything? It's a well-settled rule of law that he who seeks benefits of contract must also assume the burdens. Voluntary acceptance of benefit or transaction is equivalent to consent to all obligations arising from it so far as facts are known or ought to be known to the person accepting. So they assault you with one of their contracts. A quasi-contractual action presupposes acceptance and retention of a benefit by one party with a full appreciation of the facts under circumstances making it inequitable for him to retain the benefit without payment of its reasonable value. Did you know jail's a benefit? Yeah, they sell you into slavery. That's what the Roman cult does. Whenever the Uniform Commercial Code creates a presumption with respect to a fact or provides that a fact is presumed, the trier of fact must find the existence of the fact unless and until evidence is introduced that supports a finding of its non-existence. So they just make a presumption, and unless you introduce evidence that suggests otherwise, then that presumption stands. And that's under the Roman cult's Uniform Commercial Code, remember, Law of Nations, okay, that's all coming from the Roman cult. And this is where they get to sell you into slavery. In an action with respect to an instrument, the authenticity of an authority to make each signature on the instrument are admitted, unless specifically denied in the pleadings. Okay, so again, that creates a presumption that they sell you into slavery. Okay, so there's the presumption right here. They're going to sell you into slavery, and is presumed to be valid, unless you know what's going on and dispute it. The following, this is UCC, that was UCC 3-3.308, proven figures, signatures and status as holder in due course. This is UCC 8.114. The following rules apply in an action on a certificated security against the issuer unless specifically denied in the pleadings. The signature on a security certificate or in a necessary endorsement is admitted. So they forge your signature on the contract and they sell you into slavery, and it's all for the Roman cult. These Roman cult Satanist bar member whores masquerading as a judge forges your signature onto a contract and then presume it's authorized and authentic. And who's going to call a judge a liar? That's how they're populating the prisons. Carl Lentz brought up the issue of forgery against the CPS when they stole his son in his successful one-page lawsuit. See the Judicial Whores video. He, the prisoner, has, as a consequence of his crime, not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights, except those which the law and its humanity affords him. He is, for the time being, a slave of the state. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel, and make merchandise of him or sell of him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among you. Okay, these people are Satanists. This is all the Roman cult. And you know, we the people need to stand up and take care of business. They should all be put to death. All judges are actually clerks masquerading as judges. They're bail priests. Their black robe is their bail priest uniform. They routinely deny anything related to justice from happening because it's so good for business. They encourage their false flag operations and agent provocateurs because it's so good for business. They encourage police state murders, assaults, kidnappings, thefts because it's so good for business. Everything they do is a fraud and a lie because they're Satanists. Have you had enough yet? Patrick Henry coined the phrase, "Give me liberty or give me death," after witnessing a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. My contact information is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group is being deleted. Actually, I haven't even been there in probably months. The only time I've gone there recently is to sell stuff on Facebook Marketplace, and other than that, I don't even go back enough to check it and see if somebody's interested. Yeah, I think Facebook's going to be the next MySpace. Anyways, Yahoo private group is Administrating Your Public Servants. My Google private group is Administrating Your Public Servants. Follow me on Twitter at Engineer Win. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. I have a BitChute profile, but I don't have that many videos uploaded because they don't allow videos over 500 megabytes, and I've got several videos that are over that. And I also have a Patreon channel. There's no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties of disobedience of its command or crimes. That means everything's under martial law. That's evidence of the martial law. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. The legislature can create an offense and the same enactment provide exceptions to its application. That just means Texas is under martial law too. Under common law, under martial law, there is no law, actually. And so they have to make common law, they have to pass statutes for common law crimes like murder and things like that. That's one way you can tell it's martial law. Everything is in admiralty. The writ of error doth not lie upon a sentence in admiralty, but an appeal. Why do you think there's all these courts of appeal all over the place? Appeals are in admiralty. It's called the courts of appeal. It's the same thing that precipitated the War of Independence. This is taken from the causes and necessities for taking up arms. Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits, for depriving us of the accustomed and estimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law, instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial. We saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. Okay, that's dictatorship, folks. Founding fathers understood it. In the meantime, civil law was a form of law imposed on the Roman Empire, which was largely, if not wholly, governed by martial law rule. Equity has always been understood to follow the law. To have superior equity is to turn things on their head. That is exactly what happens when martial law is imposed. If equity is the law, then it follows its own course rather than following the common law, thereby destroying the common law and leaving what is called equity in its place. And so that's why the judge sits there. I can do anything in this courtroom I want. and that's why they sit there. They just ignore their oath of office. They sit there and play stupid. That's taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ella to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. This is the Federal Tax Lien Act, 1966. Definitions. Motor vehicle. Term motor vehicle means a self-propelled vehicle which is registered for highway use under the laws of any state or foreign country. That's a privilege. Security. The term security means any bond, debenture, note, certificate, or other evidence of indebtedness issued by a corporation, or government, or political subdivision with interest coupons. Okay, so negotiable instruments or money. Okay, that's all security. Okay, that's another privilege is to use it. So that's why I put in my videos that I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extreme less desirable alternative, I can accept the fake money. Okay, I put that in there because then all of a sudden it's a compelled benefit, okay, and they can't hold you responsible for a compelled benefit. International law rule adopted for areas under federal legislative jurisdiction. Federalizes state civil law, including common law. The rule serves to federalize not only statutory law, but the common law of a state and federal venue discussed. The civil law is effective in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction or federal law, notwithstanding their derivation from state laws. And a cause is arising under such laws and be brought in or removed to federal court under sections whatever. Okay, so the point being is that all state laws are actually federal. Jurisdiction over federal areas within the states. Report for the Interdepartmental Committee for the Study of Jurisdiction over Federal Areas within the states. Part 2, a text of the Law of Legislative Jurisdiction submitted to the Attorney General and transmitted to the President, June 1957, actually that's pages 158 through 165. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states are not included in the catalog of controversies over which the Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power nationally covers those citizens, even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. So, U.S. citizens, remember when Lindsey Graham was interviewing Kavanaugh in the Kavanaugh hearings, and Kavanaugh said that U.S. citizens can be charged for crimes in Afghanistan under U.S. law. And that's National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, 1948. A penal action is an action on a penal statute, an action for recovery of penalty given by statute. Another contract. Where an action is founded entirely upon a statute and the only object is to recover a penalty or forfeiture, such action is a penal action. These Satanists just lay awake at night dreaming this stuff up. The words penal and penalty in their strict and primary sense denote a punishment, whether corporal or pecuniary, imposed and enforced by the state for a crime against its laws, or a crime or offense against its laws. The noun penalty is defined forfeiture to be forfeited for non-compliance with an agreement. It's a contract. The words forfeit and penalty are substantially synonymous. A penal action is one founded entirely on statute, brought for the sole object of recovering a penalty or forfeiture imposed as punishment for a specific offense, while a remedial action is one brought to obtain compensation or indemnity. A penal action is a civil suit, brought for recovery of a statutory forfeiture when inflicted as punishment for an offense against the public. Such actions are civil actions on the one hand, closely related to criminal prosecutions on the other, to actions for private injuries in which the party agreed may by statute recover punitive damages. Okay, so again, this is all martial law, this is all contracts. Check out I have exclusive content available on my website and on Patreon. My website has 2 subscription levels and I accept cryptocurrencies. I have $29.99 a year for the videos only and $49.99 a year for the videos plus unlimited consultations. Now, the unlimited consultations are limits, okay, because I'm not a liar. And, well, I meant an attorney. Well, no, I meant a liar. All attorneys are liars, right? So I can tell you what I would do under certain circumstances and where to find the forms. Now, also something to keep in mind is I'm not too crazy about babysitting. So if you want to know whether you should get something under penalty of perjury or get it notarized, that's babysitting. Okay. And so I expect you to do your own research. But if you want to make a donation, just buy a subscription as a donation, well, that's certainly appreciated. I appreciate donations, and but I'm available to consult if basically if you have some educated questions to give me. I don't have a problem doing that. The only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles. I'm currently publishing, or I'm going to try and publish one video a week. YouTube has demonetized me and taking reprisals against me for my political beliefs, and so, it's hardly worth it anymore. So, we'll see how that goes. But I'm trying to do a video a week. Some of my exclusive content on my website and on Patreon is the Arlington Private Information Share, Land Deed Training, Estoppel Certificates Training, Foreclosure Estoppel Certificates Training, Corporate Denial Training, Toll Roads Notice of Demand Training, Invoice Training, Notice of Void Judgment Training, Revocation of Signature Training, Third-Party Witness Training, and Federal Habeas Corpus Training. There is also revocation of voter registration training. There's criminal complaint training. There's actually about 3 videos of that. Lawsuit training is coming up. It's not there yet. I got to get my head around how I'm going to do that, because that can be quite complicated. There's also other training if people ask. I also have Northeast Private Information Share videos that are up there. Now, on my Patreon channel, the deal is $5 a month. There's actually 3 different subscriptions you can do there. The least one is $5 a month, and all of my content is going to go on the Patreon channel first, and then I'll make it available on YouTube after. Or some of them I'll make available on YouTube, not necessarily all of them. So they'll be available on Patreon first. They'll also be on my exclusive website. We'll see how it goes. I might just switch everything over to Patreon. Anyways, all forms, files, and other instructions are available for free on my 2 private groups, the Yahoo groups and Google groups, and all exclusive content is available on my website or Patreon, and you can buy a subscription there. And it's patreon.sovereigntyinternational/sovereigntyinternational. So this is all coming from the Roman cult. The Roman cult is satanic. See Churchianity in the Roman cult video. The Roman cult is responsible for all slavery. See the International Law video and the Roman cult slave scam video. See all bar members, judges, and lawyers are agents of the Roman cult. See bar members 1, 2, and 3 videos and the judicial horrors video. See the void judgments video and the do-it-yourself kangaroo courts video series. Have you had enough yet? Patrick Henry coined the phrase, "Give me liberty or give me death," after witnessing a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. So this is all coming from the Roman cult. Within 20 years, this country is going to rule the world. Kings and emperors will soon pass away, and the democracy of the United States will take their place. When the United States rules the world, the Catholic Church will rule the world. And that's the Roman Catholic Archbishop James E. Quigley, taken from the Chicago Daily Tribune, May 5th, 1903. And there's Congress. And notice the arrows. And this is a close-up picture. And that red text, it probably would have been better if it was white. It would have been easier to see. But, somebody probably had some trouble figuring out, what color to make the text to see it. But anyways. And notice that the Pope, one thing I didn't mention, but it says Jesuit right here. He's definitely a Jesuit. 24th of September 2015. So starting with this one right here, it says Roman Achaea military staff carried in battle by all Roman commands, planted on all conquered nations. That's this one. That's this arrow right here, pointing at this staff right there. And then the next one, devout Roman Catholic, honorary degree from Jesuit Scranton University. And that is this one pointing at Biden. And this is Roman bundle of rods bound to a weapon, symbolizing subservient under the rule of a single man. And that is this right here pointing at these right here. And that's the rule of a single man. And this is devout Roman Catholic trained by Jesuits, installed first chaplain to the house. And that is this one right here pointing at Boehner or Boner or whatever his name was. Oh, and Pope Francis commits idolatry at the feet of a Mary statue. Okay, so these Satanists, these people are Satanists. Okay, he wears white to make it look like he's a good guy, but he's a Satanist. Two national governments exist, one to be maintained under the Constitution with all its restrictions, the other to be maintained by Congress outside and independent of that instrument. And that's U.S. Supreme Court, Downs versus Bidwell, 1901. Which United States are you in? Why do you think Donald Trump's first international trip includes the Roman cult on the itinerary? Why do you think that Pope Inc. looks so angry in his pictures with Donald Trump? And look at the top. He's sitting there laughing. He almost looks like satanic because him and Obama are sitting there scheming probably. Anyways, and now in the bottom one, justice is coming. Donald Trump is happy, but he's not too happy. Wah, wah, wah. An administrator is a person authorized to manage and distribute the estate of an intestate. Why do you think it's called the Trump administration or the Obama administration? Anyways, a person authorized to manage and distribute the estate of an intestate or a testator who has no executor. In English law, administrators are the officers of the ordinary appointed by him in pursuance of the statute. Their title and authority are derived exclusively from the ecclesiastical judge. And there's the ecclesiastical judge. By grants called letters of administration, and I guarantee he's got letters of administration. At first, the ordinary was appointed administrator under the Statute of Westminster, required the ordinary to appoint the next of kin and the relations by blood of the deceased. And then under Henry VIII, he could appoint the widow or next of kin or both at his discretion. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 1883 edition. Trump is an officer of the Court of the Ordinary. Court of the Ordinary, remember it talks about it here, right here, the ordinary, okay, it says here in English law, administrators are officers of the ordinary. Court of the Ordinary. In American law, the court was in jurisdiction of the probate of wills and the regulation and management of decedents' estates. Such courts exist in Georgia, New Jersey, South Carolina, and Texas. That's Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition. Ordinary, a civil law term for any judge who hath authority to take cognizance of causes in his own right, and not by deputation. By the common law it is taken for him who hath ordinary or exempt and immediate jurisdiction in clauses ecclesiastical. Okay, so this is all ecclesiastical law. This name is applied to a bishop who hath original jurisdiction, and an archbishop is the ordinary of the whole province, to visit and receive appeals from inferior jurisdictions. The word ordinary is also used for every commissary or official of a bishop or other ecclesiastical judge having judicial power. An archdeacon is an ordinary, and ordinaries may grant administration of intestates estates. So again, that's Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. A citation, a summons to appear, applied particularly in process and spiritual court. The ecclesiastical courts proceed according to the course of civil and canon law. How many have you gotten citations? A citation is also the name of process used in English ecclesiastical probate and divorce courts to call the defendant or respondent before them. Why do you think all these people are in such a panic to leave Europe in the 1600s. Okay, they wanted to get away from all this crap. Courts ecclesiastical are those courts which are held by the king's authority as supreme governor of the church for matters which chiefly concern religion, and the laws and constitutions whereby the Church of England is governed. Our own provincial constitutions and the canons made and convocations. Okay, so a courts ecclesiastical, that's Tomlin's Law Dictionary. It goes on, the proceedings in the ecclesiastical courts according to civil and canon law by citation and libel. How many of you have received citations? Okay, well, that's an ecclesiastical court. And if you don't like the sentence, if the sentence is disliked, you can appeal it. Yeah. My history of the Jesuits is not eloquently written, but it is supported by unquestionable authorities, and it is very particular and very horrible. There, the Jesuit order's restoration in 1814 by Pope Pius VII is indeed a step towards darkness, cruelty, despotism, and death. I do not like the appearance of the Jesuits. If ever there was a body of men who merited eternal damnation on earth and in hell, it is the Society of Loyola. And that's John Adams, second President of the United States. Have you had enough yet? Patrick Henry coined the phrase, "Give me liberty, give me death," after witnessing a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. Lucifer worship, Easter Vigil. Okay, this is a YouTube video, and they're sitting there. It's in Latin, and somebody translates it for you. 2012, St. Peter's Basilica. There's the Latin, and this is somebody's translation. Underneath, I say, "O Lucifer will never be defeated. Christ is your son," right? So Lucifer is, according to them, God's Father. Adolfo Nicolas Pachon, 2008, 30th Superior General, Society of Jesus, the Black Pope. January 2008 to, and I'm not sure if it's to the present, it could have been replaced since then, but I don't know what, they have a term of holding that office or not. Master and Overseer of the White Pope, Benedict XVI, right, so Satan's present ruler of the world. Go ye then unto all the world and take possession of all lands in the name of the Pope. He will not accept him as vicar of Jesus and vice-regent on earth. Let him be accursed and exterminated. And that's taken from the Jesuit oath. And notice in the statue, they got their foot on somebody. Jesuit oath. I further promise and declare that I will, when opportunity present, make and wage relentless war, and this is only part of the oath, quite frankly, secretly or openly against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, and as I am directed to do, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will spare neither age, sex, or condition, and that I will hang, waste, boil, flay, strangle, bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up their stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the walls, in order to annihilate forever their inexorable race, that when the same cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poisoned cup, the strangulating cord, the steel of the poignard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of honor, rank, or dignity, or authority of the person or persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed so to do by any agent of the Pope or superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Faith of the Society of Jesus. Ever wonder why this world is so diabolically evil? Meet the man that plans it that way, the Black Pope, Adolfo Nicolas, the most powerful man in the world, behind the plan for the New World Order. The Superior General of the Jesuits, the Black Pope, Adolfo Nicolas, and his 6 generals control the White Pope in the Vatican and the entire list below. The Illuminati, the Zionists, the global elites, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, the Freemasons, the Council of 300, the United Nations, the Council of Trent. The Jesuits control the Knights Templar, the Knights of Columbus, and the Knights of Malta, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the ASIO, MI5, MI6, NCIS, FSB, DGSC, Mossad. Every intelligence agency in the world are Masonic and controlled by the Jesuits. The Jesuits has infiltrated most governments and leaders, including Obama. I don't think they have Trump, but it's hard to say, making them puppets that carry out Jesuit orders. I think Trump has Jesuits around him, though, for sure. Matter of fact, I've seen pictures of him with Jesuits. Vatican New World Order. Herman Van Rompuy, the president of the European Council, stated recently, "We're all Jesuits." He's referred to those prominent European leaders with whom he is developing the Roman Catholic architecture for the future Europe. it creates unbreakable ties. So there is a Jesuits International, and look at, they're all having such a good time there. IHS is in His Majesty, or in His service. That's Jesuit symbol. Pope Nicholas V issued papal bull Dum Diversus on the 14th of June, 1452. It authorized Alfonso V of Portugal to reduce any Saracens, Muslims, pagans, any other unbelievers that's not Catholic, to perpetual slavery. This facilitated the Portuguese slave trade from West Africa. The same Pope wrote Bull Romanus Pontifex on January 5th, 1455, to the same Alfonso as a follow-up to Dum Diversus. It extended to the Catholic nations of Europe dominion over discovered lands during the Age of Discovery, along with sanctifying the seizure of non-Christian, actually non-Catholic, lands. It encouraged the enslavement of native non-Catholic peoples in Africa and the New World. We weighing all and singular, the premise with due meditation, and noting that since we had formally by our letters of ours granted, among other things, free and ample faculty, the aforesaid King Alfonso to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, country, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his and their use and profit, so steal their property, by having secured the same faculty, and the said King Alfonso, and by his authority said infant, justly and lawfully has acquired and possessed and doth possess these islands, lands, harbors, and seas, and they do of right belong and pertain to the said King Alfonso and his successors. In 1493, Alexander VI issued papal bull Inter Cetera, stating one Christian nation did not have the right to establish dominion over the lands previously dominated by another Christian nation, thus establishing the law of nations. Okay, so then that's the law of nations, or international law, and out of that has come public international law, private international law, unidroit, all that stuff. It all comes out of that. Together, the Dum Diversus, Romanus Pontifex, and the Inter Cetera came to serve as the basis and justification for the doctrine of discovery, the global slave trade of the 15th and 16th centuries in the age of imperialism. And this is a book called The Lines of Demarcation of Pope Alexander VI and the Treaty of Tordesillas by Samuel Edward Dawson. And here on page 471 it says, if therefore we put aside conventional law or treaty law of nations, it will be seen that modern international law is founded on Roman law and on canon law, the latter which was carried over all Europe by Roman Church, for even in England up till the time of Edward III, the Lord Chancellor was always Roman cult. The Rothschilds have been part of the Jesuit order since way before 1776. The Maltese cross indicates membership and allegiance to the sovereign military order of Malta. The Masonic order, created in 1099 by direct descendants of Roman emperors, of which the Jesuit order is a brand. Isn't it interesting that the Pope calls fake news a sin, yet the Catholic Church has been selling false saviors and implicated in child pedophilia for centuries? Sensational and the most horrifying religious massacre of the 20th century by Averell Manhattan. Averell Manhattan was the world's foremost authority on Roman Catholicism and politics. A resident of London during World War II, he operated a radio station called Radio Freedom, broadcasting to occupied Europe. He was the author of over 20 books, including the bestseller The Vatican and World Politics, twice Book of the Month, and going through 57 editions. He was a Great Britain who risked his life daily to expose some of the darkest secrets of the papacy. His books were #1 on the Forbidden Index for the past 50 years. This issue from 1986. In 2006, the record is now 70 years on the Forbidden Book list. The Vatican's Holocaust is not a misnomer, an accusation, or even a speculation. It is an historical fact. Rabid nationalism and religious dogmatism were its two main ingredients during the existence of Croatia as an independent Catholic state Over 700,000 men, women, and children perished. Many were executed, tortured, died of starvation, buried alive, or were burned to death. Hundreds were forced to become Catholic. Catholic padres ran concentration camps. Catholic priests were officers of the military corps, which committed such atrocities. 700,000 in a total population of a few million. Probably would be as if 1/3 of the USA population had been exterminated by the Catholic militia. What has been gathered in this book will vindicate the veracity of these facts. Dates, names, places, as well as photos are there to prove them. They should become known to the American public, not to foster vindictiveness, but to warn them of the danger which racialism and sectarianism, when applied with religious intolerance, can bring to any contemporary nation, whether in Europe or in the New World. This work should be assessed without prejudice as a lesson, but even more vital as a warning to the future of the Americans, beginning with that of the USA. An armed Serbia could have easily prevented this Holocaust. Thank God for the Second Amendment to the Constitution, which guarantees the right to bear arms. Freedom of religion and armed citizenry go hand in hand, and is the only guarantee this won't happen in the U.S. Editor's note, it is the Vatican's one world government. Gee, isn't that something that George Bush was talking about, a New World Order? That doesn't want you to have the right to own arms or to use any means to defend yourself. Of course, they want you defenseless. Pope claims you're not Christian if you own a gun. Yeah, right, yeah. There's Satan's spawn right there. Have you had enough yet? Patrick Henry coined the phrase, "Give me liberty or give me death," after witnessing a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. The New World Order. This was written in 1989 by A. Ralph Epperson. The family, homosexual marriages will be legalized. Well, that's happened. Parents will not be allowed to raise their children. Well, that's certainly been all over the place. People having their children stolen. All women will be employed by the state and not allowed to be homemakers. Divorce will become exceedingly easy. Monogamous marriage will slowly be phased out. Government will become the owner of all factors of production. Religion will be outlawed. Believers will be eliminated or imprisoned. There will be a new religion, the worship of man in his mind. All will believe in the new religion. Okay, that's one world religion. That sounds like the Roman cult. Jewish Encyclopedia, 1901 to 1906, Volume 2, page 497, says at the top, it says, the influence of the Rothschilds by establishing a banking concern which should be essentially Catholic. Meanwhile, the nationalist and reactionary parties in France desired to counterbalance the Semitic influence of the Rothschilds by establishing a banking concern which should be essentially Catholic. And then if you go down to the bottom, it says, in the somewhat curious sequel to the attempt to set up a Catholic competitor to the Rothschilds, that at the present time the latter are the guardians of the papal treasure. Yeah. So check out my other videos: Bankster Thieves playlist, Roman Cult playlist, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, Bar Members 1 through 3, Do-It-Yourself How Not to Volunteer for the Selective Service, and the Draft, Martial Laws Here, Do-It-Yourself No Income Tax, Do-It-Yourself Free Mail, Do-It-Yourself Kangaroo Courts 1 through 15, Canada Border Pigs playlist, Bar Members and their Satanic Connections playlist. So, if you're owned and you're a slave, and when your government has all the guns, which is what the Roman cult wants to do, this is the kind of thing that happens. Any society that would give up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and lose both. Well said. Oh, and there's some order followers, and there's some order followers, and this is the kind of stuff that happens, blood sacrifice to the Roman cult's god Baal. I was just following orders is never a valid excuse or justification for immoral criminal behavior, and this lame attempt to abdicate personal responsibility should never be accepted as a valid excuse for such behavior. Every great injustice has been at the hands of someone just following orders. Oh, and there's a bunch of law-abiding citizens, people, and this is the Roman cult's blood sacrifice, and there's some brave soldiers getting some loot, going and getting some gold fillings and stuff like that, I'm sure. Have you had enough yet? Patrick Henry coined the phrase, "Give me liberty or give me death," after witnessing a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. Those who make their fortunes from you being sick are the same people who tell you what will make you well. Death by medicine. Matter of fact, it's called medicide. Every great injustice has been at the hands of someone just following orders. Oh, and there's some good law-abiding citizens there that participating in a Roman cult blood sacrifice to their god Baal. And Pope doesn't want you to have a gun. He claims you're not Christian if you own a gun. Is he an expert in Christianity? Ha! He's Satan's spawn. Taxes were not raised to carry on wars. Wars were raised to carry on taxes. Oh, and there's another satanic blood sacrifice to the Roman cult god Baal. War is not meant to be won, it's meant to be continuous. And there's some more satanic blood sacrifice to the Roman cult's god Baal. We had grasped the great truth that it was not rifles, not tanks, and not atom bombs that created power, nor upon them that power rested. Power depended on public obedience, upon a willingness to submit. There's a pile of blood sacrifices to the Roman cult's god Baal. Have you had enough yet? Patrick Henry coined the phrase, "Give me liberty or give me death," after witnessing a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. Why does the government want to ban semi-automatic rifles? Because they know you won't get into boxcars willingly. The Pope claims you're not Christian if you own a gun. China established gun control in 1935, and from 1948 to 1952, 20 million political dissidents unable to defend themselves were rounded up and exterminated. The illusion of free choice, left or right, it all ends up in the same place. Oh, and this is the Roman cult's torture chamber during the Inquisitions. There's the pillory, there's the scavenger's daughter, there's the iron, there's the Iron Maiden, there's the rack, there's the bastinado, there's gossip's bridle or brank. Lots of torture tools. There's some more there for the Spanish Inquisition. This is stuff the Roman cult does. Fidget spinner, 1586. They get to torture some more. There's some more torture tools, the Roman cult's Inquisition. Have you had enough yet? Patrick Henry coined the phrase, "Give me liberty or give me death," after a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. And the Pope claims you're not Christian if you own a gun. Hey, there's my kind of girl. The United States is third in murders throughout the world. If you remove number 1, Chicago, number 2, Detroit, number 3, Washington, D.C., number 4, St. Louis, number 5, New Orleans, the United States is 189th out of 193 countries in the entire world. P.S. All 5 cities have strict gun control laws. Wars when your government tells you who the enemy is. Revolutions when you figure it out for yourself. When liberty and freedom are at stake, your silence isn't golden, it's yellow. So give me liberty or give me death is a phrase coined by Patrick Henry after watching a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. They were assaulting people with their Roman cult Satanic trust. In doing this, I shall have occasion incidentally to evince how true it is that states and governments were made for man, and at the same time how true it is that his creatures and servants have first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. A state like a merchant makes a contract. A dishonest state, like a dishonest merchant, willfully refuses to discharge it. Government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. Everything they do is a fraud. A U.S. citizen's a fraud. Commercial paper is a fraud. Their Federal Reserve notes, all mortgages are a fraud. They get you to participate in the fraud, then you can't complain about the fraud anymore. Then they assault you with one of their so-called contracts and they sell you into slavery. Everybody in prison was sold into slavery with privileges. It's got to be a privilege. It's a contract. A Social Security number, a birth certificate, accepting their person is literally a contract with the devil. So you got to quit using anything related to a Social Security number. You got to quit using anything related to a birth certificate. A date of birth is hearsay. I have no first-hand knowledge of that. Quit accepting the person. Quit giving evidence against yourself. Quit registering your vehicle. Many times you can educate whoever you are dealing with, if necessary. Do without whatever the so-called benefit is. In other words, certainly, I have no interest in collecting Social Security or anything. They can put it where the sun doesn't shine. And this is, again, the Federal Tax Lien Act of 1966. I think I already read this. So quit registering your vehicle. Under definitions, paragraph 3 of motor vehicle means a self-propelled vehicle which is registered for highway use under the laws of any state or foreign country. Okay, so if it's not registered, then, I mean, that's what you got to do, is quit registering your vehicle. A vehicle is not used for commercial activity as consumer goods. It is not a type of vehicle required to be registered and use tax paid, of which the tab is evidence of receipt of the tax. And that's Bank of Boston versus Jones. That's the UCC cases. A political subdivision of this state may not require an owner of a motor vehicle to register the vehicle, pay a motor vehicle registration fee. And that's Texas Transportation Code 502.003, registration by political subdivision prohibited. And this is plates available and laminated Texas sheet codes. This is Texas plates that I'm making available. This is in Texas. This one's really well thought out, but the color is yellow with blue lettering. But I really I like what's everything is on here. This is the laminated sheet. So at the top it says driver's license and speed signs do not apply to me. Okay, and so Texas Transportation Code 201.904. Speed signs, the department shall erect and maintain on the highways and roads of the state appropriate signs that show a maximum lawful speed for commercial vehicles, truck tractors, truck trailers, truck semi-trailers, motor vehicles engaged in the transporting passengers or property for hire. Okay, so if you're a Uber driver, if you do Uber, then you got to play those, follow those rules. And then there's some court cases that say there's no such thing as a driver's license under Texas law. And then on the bottom part there, nobody's required to register a vehicle. Again, it's got 502.003 at the bottom, registration by political subdivision prohibited. A political subdivision of this state may not require a owner of a motor vehicle to register the vehicle, pay a motor vehicle registration fee, or pay an occupation tax or license fee in connection with the motor vehicle. In other words, you're not required to have a driver's license if it's not registered. Okay? And then the Texas Transportation Code 501.004, applicability of the Certificate of Title Act. This chapter applies to motor vehicle owned by the state. Okay, so again, if you get a certificate of title, you just gave it to the state. And this is another plate that's available in Texas. I like these plates. And this is what's on the back side of that same document. Now the nice thing about this back here is you could use this on any vehicle anywhere. It just show that you have a Texas address and then have a Texas plate. Republic of Texas. I like Republic of Texas because then I can say that you're engaged in war crimes. It's taking reprisals against me for my political beliefs. Anyways, So you could do that anywhere, because all of these other states have to have, other countries even have to recognize Texas law. Anyways, so and this is on the other side of the laminated sheet, but this will only be good in Texas. And I actually had a cop one time that was wanted to read my VIN. Vehicle identification number, and I put that up on the dash, and I said that's a forbidden zone. You're not allowed to read that, and he left. So again, this is very useful. I leave those things laying around when I go out. When I leave my car, I park it somewhere. I'll leave one of those things, that forbidden zone, out, and basically telling anybody that wants to come by and mess with my car, if they're honest, like the cops, they got to leave it alone. Anyways, this is the plate that I use, or a similar plate. And that other plate that's black and white, you got a picture that the whole background is yellow, this color of yellow, because these are Texas colors. Yellow and blue are Texas colors. And so the background will be yellow, and then all the text will be blue, this color of blue. Anyways, I like the colors on this plate. there's other things that, like the Republic of Texas. I don't like it in all block capital letters. Matter of fact, I like the way the other one's done, where it says Texas Republic. I like that the best. And then private property in all block capital letters. Don't like that either. Anyways, but these plates are available. This is the one I use, actually. It's a different number, but that's the one I use. And I've been driving around like that since March and haven't had any trouble at all. They don't even, it's like they don't even see me. They just drive right on past me. They haven't followed me. There's only one time that I was driving through a parking lot, and this cop was like, I was looking at my packages. I just left my mail place, and I was looking at my packages, and I looked up, and there's this cop right on my tail. And so then I figured, well, I was driving through the parking lot, basically cross country through a parking lot. And so then I figured, well, I better go over to this where the road is marked. And then all of a sudden the cop is gone. And so I guess he got told or something. I don't know. But never. That's the only time they've even followed me. Otherwise, they just they just drive right on past. And I'd pass cops, they'd pass me. It's like they don't even pay any attention. Anyways, these plates are available for from nsca.us, and there's nothing wrong with this plate. They have good plates. I like the Republic of Texas ones because I can claim that they're engaged in war crimes that are taking reprisals against me for my political beliefs, because Republic of Texas is obviously a political belief, and so I like using that, quite frankly. Anyways, and the Republic of Texas plates can be used anywhere because all states are required to recognize Texas law, but you would need a Texas address. And again, under Texas Transportation Code 502.003, it says a political subdivision of the state may not require an owner of a motor vehicle to register the vehicle, pay a motor vehicle registration fee, or pay an occupation tax or license fee in connection with it. In other words, you don't have to have a driver's license if it's not registered. And then Texas Transportation Code 501.004, the Certificate of Title Act applicability, says that this chapter applies to motor vehicles owned by the state or a political subdivision of the state. So my vehicle's not owned by the state. I'm just a private guy. That's why I have private property there. Anyways, you can get a laminated sheet combined with a Texas plate from me for 3 pieces of fine silver, 1 troy ounce each, or $50 in military script / fake money / Federal Reserve notes, or PayPal, or however you want to do it. You can also get the laminated sheets from Catman 1, and it was his research that put that together, quite frankly. And I was actually selling them for less than that, but he got on my case because he doesn't want me undercutting him, and I can't blame him, and he did the research. So, I mean, he's a brilliant guy, and I got to give him credit for it, and so I charged $20 because that's the one that he said I can't charge less than $20 because otherwise I'm undercutting him. So he did the research. He deserves the credit. He also has a book that's full of his research, and it's got lots of stuff from Texas, but there's also stuff from elsewhere too. He's got identification cards. He's got a lot more. So if anybody's interested in any of that stuff, I suggest you contact catman1@gmail.com. You can also get the NSCA plates from info@nsca.us. And again, if we have constitutional peace officers, then we'll have good government, because they can't do anything without having some peace officer turning into a law enforcement officer and following orders. And so again, I would say that we should always encourage our local sheriffs and peace officers, city police, wherever. In my lawsuits, I tell them that I'm prepared to forgive them if they show evidence of repentance, and evidence of repentance could be that they join the Sheriff Richard Mack's Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association and participate. And so I'm telling you that all of this New World Order stuff, you know, when the Soviet Union collapsed, what happened is it collapsed because the order followers refused to follow orders. They just quit following orders. And that's when the Soviet Union finally collapsed. That was back in the 90s. And what happened was they had that wall in Berlin, and there was a no man's area where they were people would flee East Berlin, go into West Berlin to the west, and they'd get machine gunned. Well, and one day they just quit machine gunning them. They didn't want to kill people like that anymore. And then it's like one or two, and the next thing you know, there's millions of people going across. And then they started tearing down the wall. And so that's my point, is that they absolutely have to have order followers. And if we educate our peace officers about what their lawful duty is, and then all of that, all of this New World Order stuff is just going to go right out the window. Okay, so again, it's all fraud and deception, and we got to encourage our peace officers, educate them. Anyways, so this is the end. I didn't say it'd be easy. I said it'd be the truth. And I appreciate you watching my video. I hope you will like it, because we got to overcome this YouTube reprisals that they're making against people for their political beliefs. They're going to get sued. I want to see some of them in jail, these Google Satanists. I want to see some of them in jail, quite frankly, because that's where they belong. Matter of fact, maybe if we're real lucky, we'll get to see some get their necks stretched, but I wouldn't hold my breath about that. But I'd really like to see that. Boy, hear that snap, you know. Anyways, anyways, thanks for watching, and have a great day.